for tuning in to the Voice of Pancreatic Cancer podcast. I'm your host, Miranda Weinberg. Today, I'm excited to introduce a Dutch clinical stage oncology company called Merus. We'll be getting to know each other a little bit better in this episode, and they'll be sharing some exciting new developments about their clinical trial.
Hi, Miranda. Thank you for hosting us on your channel. We're really impressed with the great work you are doing for pancreatic cancer patients and thrilled to be here to tell you how Merus is closing in on cancer. For a bit of background on myself, I've been in the pharmaceutical industry for more than 20 years with roles as a clinical research associate, study coordinator, and global trial manager. I've been with Merus for 5.5 years after a 10-year stint in Novartis Oncology. At Merus, I am responsible for the operational and strategic oversight of all of our clinical trials.
Hi, Jim. Thank you all for meeting with us. We're always so excited to share the results of research.
Hi, Miranda. I'm Dan Hennessy. I recently joined Merus as the Vice President of Medical Affairs. I have more than 20 years of experience in medical affairs and having built and led teams at companies such as Sanofi, EMD Serono, and most recently Constellation. I've had the privilege of contributing to more than 13 new drug launches, and I'm really passionate about developing drugs and ensuring they get to the right patient at the right time.
It's so nice to meet all of you, and I should say that I'm actually the Marketing and Communications Director here at the Foundation. I was actually the first ever employee here at the Foundation. Before that, we were run just solely based on volunteers, so we're a very grassroots organization. We only just recently, as of a few months ago, added another team member to help with web design, so we are a very small grassroots company.
Thanks, Miranda. Can you tell us about the foundation and your overall priorities?
Sure, yeah. So we are, a 501c3 nonprofit. The only thing that we fund is research. So we're different from other organizations in that way because we don't do a lot of advocacy and education. We do some, but really only, what we do in-house. But our big funding push is all of our money, 100% of the donations goes directly to research.
And how do you partner with industry?
So we actually have very specific partnerships with different hospitals. We had a long-time partnership with Honor Health Research Institute in Arizona, which was our initial partnership. And then we partnered with the Medical College of Wisconsin and very recently Sylvester Cancer Center in Florida. And we work with all three of those as well as with Dr. Von Hoff to decide which trials our funding is going to support.
In 2019, Merus opened an early access program to provide access of Zenocutuzumab, known as Zeno, to patients who were unable to enroll into our ongoing clinical trials, and to also test how effective Zeno was at treating patients with solid tumors that have a rare mutation called an eNRGy fusion. Data from the first few treated patients corroborated what our own preclinical data showed and demonstrated initial anti-tumor activity in this population of patients. Merus then started a campaign to raise awareness for eNRGy testing, in particular for pancreatic cancer patients, who often aren't offered next-generation sequencing, referred to as NGS, because there have been no targeted therapies available. We knew we had to help increase awareness and access to NGS for patients, particularly those with tumor types that lack approved targeted therapies. For example, in pancreatic cancer, the standard of care has been chemotherapy, but beyond that, there haven't been any other options and no approved targeted therapies. With research into new experimental drugs that could target specific mutations in pancreatic cancer, like Zeno, pancreatic cancer patients could potentially benefit from genetic testing to help determine their next best course of treatment or to learn of enrollment opportunities in clinical trials with these investigational targeted agents. Since 2019, we've been working with advocacy groups, academic institutions, and national screening programs that perform local genetic testing and raising awareness about the opportunity to participate in NGS screening supported by Merus and to raise awareness of our clinical trial known as eNRGy. Merus has signed agreements with Caris Life Sciences, Foundation Medicine, and Tempus Labs to identify patients with eNRGy positive cancer and determine suitability of enrollment of these patients in Merus's eNRGy trial. Further, we have a collaboration with Caris that initially focused on screening in pancreatic cancer, where Merus has agreed to financially support eligible patients to obtain DNA and RNA molecular testing. We've now expanded this program to other tumor types outside of pancreatic cancer, and we are hopeful that the Magowitz Foundation can help raise awareness of the increasing clinical trial opportunities, like with Zeno, for patients with pancreatic cancer.
Awesome.
Dan Hennessy will now lead you through the very exciting data of Zeno, which was presented at the 2022 ASCO annual meeting.
Hi all, I'm excited to briefly walk you through the recent Zenocutuzumab data, or as we now call the drug candidate, Zeno. This is a global study with sites participating in the US, EU, and Japan. And Zeno targets a specific driver of cancer called eNRGy fusion. And these eNRGy positive cancers can be found by testing tumors with different molecular tests, such as next generation sequencing or NGS. Merus's drug Zeno is a bispecific antibody which has the potential to be the first in class, best in class for targeting eNRGy positive cancers. And the FDA has granted fast track designation for Zeno for the treatment of patients with eNRGy positive cancers, including those with lung, pancreatic, breast, as well as other solid tumor types. To enroll in the study, patient's tumor must have been eNRGy fusion positive, meaning that they tested positive for eNRGy fusions with the appropriate molecular test. As of April 2022, there were 110 patients enrolled in the clinical program, and this also includes patients from an early access program who are unable to enroll in any of our clinical sites. Of these 110 patients, 79 had measurable disease and a 6-month follow-up time, which allowed us to study responses and response duration. Among others, we enrolled patients with metastatic pancreatic cancer, and most patients had already had previous lines of therapy. All patients on the trial received Zenocutuzumab every 2 weeks via intravenous infusion. So demographically, the eNRGy positive cancer patients with advanced disease who enrolled in this study had a median age of 59. 23% of the patients in the trial were pancreatic cancer patients. 57% of patients had lung cancer, and the balance had different solid tumors that were also eNRGy positive. As I mentioned previously, these patients were heavily pretreated and received a median of 2 prior lines of therapy. And as discussed previously as well, all the patients had their eNRGy status confirmed by NGS or next generation sequencing, with the vast majority having a type of NGS testing called RNA sequencing. If you're watching this YouTube because you or a loved one has been diagnosed with cancer, this type of molecular testing has the potential to genetically profile your specific cancer and can help guide both therapeutic decisions and also decisions whether to participate in a clinical trial, such as Merus's eNRGy trial. In terms of outcome, this slide shows responses to Zeno in what we call a waterfall plot. Overall, 42% of patients with pancreatic cancer achieved the response by investigator review. And this means that their tumor shrank by at least 30% based upon 2 different measurements occurring generally 8 weeks apart. The patients represented in orange in this plot represent pancreatic cancer patients. And this was a similar pattern that we saw in lung cancer and the other solid tumors from the trial. The patients with lung cancer experienced a 35% response rate. Overall, tumor reduction was seen in 70% of patients across the different tumor types of patients treated. And we were encouraged to see these responses across all of the different tumor types. The next slide shows both the time to response and time on Zeno. As you see, responses tend to happen quickly, on average about 7 or 8 weeks. This corresponds with the first CAT scan or MRI scan as part of the trial protocol. At the ASCO meeting in June 2022, we showed that the median duration of response was over 9 months. And recall that these patients had on average multiple lines of therapy and had cancer progression. And it's typical that with further lines of therapy, response durations tend to shorten. So this is therefore very, very encouraging for the activity of Zeno. This next slide shows an eNRGy positive pancreatic cancer patient with metastasis to the liver. If you follow the arrows, the tumors have shrunk. And also, if you look at the graph, you see that the patient experienced tumor shrinkage at less than 2 months after receiving Zeno. This patient received 10 cycles of Zeno, and we're encouraged to see this response in a metastatic pancreatic cancer patient. This next slide demonstrates Zeno's safety profile. The safety profile is from 208 patients treated with Zeno in the clinical program. Here we reported low incidence of grade 3 or higher treatment-related adverse events. low incidence of severe gastrointestinal and skin toxicity, and no clinical cardiotoxicity. Less than 1% of patients discontinued the trial due to adverse events. In conclusion, Zeno shows durable responses in previously treated eNRGy cancer in multiple tumor types, including pancreatic cancer. It has a well-tolerated safety profile, and we think this could be a new standard of care for patients whose cancer test positive for eNRGy using NGS technology. Of course, as a clinical trial, Zeno has not been approved or determined by any regulatory authority, such as FDA, as safe or effective for use for which it is under investigation. But we are encouraged by these data and the potential that Zeno may hold.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. So I just have one question then. Why was the age range so much lower?
No one is entirely sure, but sometimes when you have cancers that develop with genetic mutations, they can develop in patients on the younger side. For context, many patients are associated with environmental factors such as smoking, and those tend to affect older patients, and they tend to develop over time, sometimes decades. And the cancers that are associated with genetic factors don't need the decades of exposure, and they can occur in a younger age range.
Thank you so much, Dan and Jim. This has been very informative. And I just have another question. If someone that's listening wants to know more about Merus or other cancer options, where should they go?
Thanks, Miranda. There's a slew of available information on both the eNRGy.com website and Merus's website, merus.nl. There's a brochure for testing on the eNRGy.com website that a patient can download and bring to their physician to see if they qualify for the testing. Merus often covers the testing costs for qualified patients around the world. Merus also offers travel reimbursement for study participants who don't live near a trial site. We work with a travel agency that can arrange travel, and the cost is covered. We also have the ability through some of our partners to open up a clinical trial site near a patient. So say a patient is identified in a place that is not close to an existing clinical trial site. We can potentially open one up in 10 to 15 days as long as there's a participating site nearby. These are referred to as just-in-time sites. At Merus, our goal is closing in on cancer, and we're excited to be investigating this potential new treatment for pancreatic cancer patients who are eNRGy positive.
Thank you so much, Dan and Jim, for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, Miranda. It was a pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you, Miranda. Great to meet you, and thank you for taking the time today.